Hey, I'm Steven from Rugged Rocks, and today we're going to just do a quick story about where the diamond axle came from. So, back in probably 2009 or 2010, All Pro Off-Road, who, if you're not familiar, is a company that does a lot of Toyota stuff. And they did a 3-link solid axle swap kit for the Tacomas. Well, at the time, there wasn't a 3-link kit available for solid axle swapping Pathfinders and Hardbodies and stuff, at least not with links. You could do it with leaf spring parts, but there wasn't a solution for a 3-link, which is what I really wanted to do. So I did what most people do. I sought out a Wagoneer Dana 44, and I ended up using the All Pro Off-Road Tacoma solid axle. Some modifications, but it really wasn't a whole lot of changes to get that kit to work under the Pathfinder. And that worked for a little while, but ultimately I wasn't that happy with it, and by no fault of All Pros at all. See, the Dana 44 has a lot of shortcomings when it comes to using specifically that Wagoneer Dana 44 under other vehicles that have a different offset. So the pinion offset from center will differ from the transfer case for an output offset from center. So you end up with compound drive shaft angles. Also, these trucks, once we solid axle swap them, are typically taller than a Grand Wagoneer was, so the caster is off, and you have to cut and turn the knuckles, and if you don't do that right, your truck's not going to drive right at all. Axle tubes are not the biggest axle tubes. They're bigger than some Jeep axle tubes, like TJs are really small, but there's just a lot of things that are left kind of on the table, a lot of things that are desired out of a front axle that the Dana 44 out of the Grand Wagoneer just doesn't take care of. But even All Pro, after a short amount of time offering brackets for the Wagoneer 44 to be set up under a Tacoma, discontinued those brackets as well, because ultimately the diamond axle is a better way to go. So the diamond axle is basically a custom fabricated housing that allows you to set all the dimensions for your axle for your specific application. On top of that, it's a lot stronger, and there's just so many advantages. I'm not going to get into all of them in this video, but ultimately after I solid axle swapped my Pathfinder with the Dana 44, I was like, you know what, I could do better. I could do better, and when I do, I want to put out a kit, and this is how we're going to do it. And I put a lot of thought into how this was going to work, how to maximize travel, eliminate compound drive shaft angles as much as physically possible, put on 14-inch travel coilovers, just everything, A to Z. This thing, at the end of the day, using the diamond axle with all the brackets that we came up with, was able to go under that truck, and everything just fit like a puzzle. Everything was really, really thought out. Me and a friend Kenny, we were the guys that were really doing these truck builds years ago. And when I first told him what I wanted to do and how I was going to overcome certain obstacles, he told me it couldn't be done. And I took all the measurements and I planned everything out. And I was like, look, this is exactly what we need to do. And ultimately, when it came down to it, I ordered up the diamond housing from Front Range, Brian up at Front Range Off-Road, and we got to work and we put this together. Now, this housing was not an off-the-shelf thing. See, Front Range Off-Road builds these housings mostly for Toyota guys, and they also have a version for the Ford 9-inch third members. So the Nissans use an H233B. I know it's a handful. The H233B is a really common axle that came in all the V6 trucks, especially the four-wheel drives, prior to 2005. So we're talking first-gen Xterra Frontiers and older, going back to like the mid to late 80s. Now, it's got a 9.25-inch ring gear, which is pretty stout. It uses a third member, so you're not setting up gears in the housing. You're doing it in the third member, and the whole chunk loads into the housing. And I'll post pictures of that after if you're not familiar. Also, by going with the diamond housing, you're able to weld the housing rather than having to build a truss and not having to worry about trying to weld to cast housings and really massage. You don't want to be massaging junkyard axles into a puzzle that it wasn't meant to be in. So it's really best you start with an axle that is meant for the application that you're putting it under. So there's a ton of advantages to running the diamond axle, but ultimately the story goes, I started out with an All-Pro 3-link kit under the Pathfinder. It then went to Diamond, and just like All-Pro did eventually, they went to Diamond, had their Toyota version made for the Tacomas. Brian ended up making me the Nissan version, and then we had a bracket kit that fits that housing, and everything goes together actually pretty dang smooth. So the first time you do it, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you understand how all the brackets get welded to the housing and to the steering knuckles and everything goes on pretty dang smooth. I know me and Kenny, when we really put our minds to it and got everything lined up well, we were able to turn around a truck in just a couple of days, like 2 or 3 days. So it was a lot of work, but it was doable, and it was awesome. So I guess really the short of this story is, I didn't originally think of the diamond axle. It was already out there for the Toyota guys. I just adapted it to the Nissan world, and it was very advantageous to do so. So maybe in another video at another time, I'll go down the list of all the different reasons to use a diamond housing rather than a junkyard axle, but we'll save that for another time. Stay tuned for some more Instagram videos. Again, I'm going to be posting these stories on the Instagram highlights, and I just have a couple more for you guys before we start working on some new, fun, forward-thinking stuff. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.